Good evening. My name is Peter Neufeld, and I, along with Barry Scheck, are the co-founders of the Innocence Project. And we are delighted to be here this evening to introduce all of you to our new executive director, Christina Swarns.
When the job search began for a new executive director at the Innocence Project, Peter and I told the board of directors and the people involved in the search that we wanted to find somebody that knew us, knew the organization, knew our mission, knew what we'd accomplished. We needed somebody that could be a great leader, and they found her. So, Christina, let me just ask you very simply, why the Innocence Project and why now?
The Innocence Project is the most trusted and influential criminal justice reform organization in the world. Its willingness to fearlessly speak hard truths about the functioning of the criminal legal system make it the exact organization to lead the nation forward at this critical moment in history. I have spent my entire career working in the field of criminal justice reform. Like you, Barry and Peter, I started my career at the Legal Aid Society as a public defender. And it was actually in the conference room of the Legal Aid Society that I watched you show the world for the first time the power and potential of DNA evidence. It was just 1 year later that I wound up working with you again on a case of a death sentenced person in Pennsylvania, Nicholas Yaris, who insisted that he was unequivocally innocent. The only way we could figure out whether Nick was innocent was to talk to the experts at the Innocence Project, and he became the first death sentenced prisoner in Pennsylvania to be exonerated by DNA evidence. There's no one more important in the conversation about the Innocence Project than the people at the center of our work. I had the pleasure last week of meeting with the Exoneree Council, the people the Innocence Project has represented that have also committed themselves to working with us and guiding our work forward. These are people who spent an enormous amount of time in prison for crimes they didn't commit. They came out of prison and they've committed to working with us to make sure that what happened to them doesn't happen to another person. They are a source of inspiration, and I am so honored that I get to do this work with them.
In the wake of George Floyd's murder, it does seem as though there are, frankly, opportunities in terms of changing the system with respect to racial justice and law enforcement accountability. Where do you see the Innocence Project's role in this? What do you think we have ahead of us?
Well, the Innocence Project is perfectly positioned to lead around these issues, just as it has historically. Race does play a role throughout history in the administration of justice. It requires us to take action to figure out how we remove race from the calculus, how we are able to make fair and accurate determinations in the system. And that's this moment. That's the moment that people across the country are calling out for. And because this organization has really presented this track record of exposing how race contributes to those wrongful outcomes, it's incumbent upon us to take that mantle and push it forward and find ways to correct these injustices in the system.
A lot of our supporters are much more familiar with our work exonerating people than they are with the reality that since the very, very beginning, we've been in policy reform and we've tried to improve the way the criminal legal systems work in the United States. Do you have a sense of how we can continue to expand on things, even, for instance, on police accountability?
There's very little accountability for police officers whose conduct leads to someone being wrongfully convicted. That's because the law is extremely protective of law enforcement to such a degree that it's almost impossible for there to be liability. So in light of all that we have seen with George Floyd, with Eric Garner, there's been a real call for a change of that law, which is absolutely necessary. The Innocence Project is working on a variety of initiatives to address this. Just this year in New York, the Innocence Project was one of the leaders of the campaign to repeal 50A, which was a law that for years shielded police misconduct and histories of complaints by police officers. And now, for the first time, we have the kind of transparency that's necessary to ensure that the people who are policing our communities in New York City are the people who should be policing our communities. And that work is being done by the Innocence Project all across the country. I also want to thank all of you, the people who have joined our effort to make sure that the criminal legal system functions as it should. So many of you saw what happened to George Floyd, to Ahmaud Aubrey, to Breonna Taylor, and you were moved to act, and you trusted this organization because you know its history. You understand that we are willing to fearlessly address these issues and do what's necessary to make the system function properly. I want to thank you for your recognition that everyone is entitled to the presumption of innocence, that people of color should not be stripped of the presumption of innocence on the street, that all of us have to be treated fairly by the legal system. And I want to thank you for committing your time, committing your resources, committing your energy to working with us and trusting us to lead this fight forward. And I would appreciate it if you would consider texting innocence to 52886 to pledge your support.
Thank you so much, Christina, for agreeing to do this, to lead us. It's going to be a remarkable experience for everyone that works at the Innocence Project, for all the people in the Innocence Movement, 56 organizations. We couldn't be more inspired or thrilled that you're going to be leading us.
There is nobody better situated to help lead this movement for change in criminal legal systems. The exonerees are excited. Our network is excited. The entire organization is thrilled. Our supporters are responding appropriately. And on behalf of all of them, welcome aboard.